Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Online dating. I met this girl online. Online dating. I met this girl online. Clicked and fell into this deep.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Larry Yates Is show. This is a magnificent day, and Larry is on the road again. So in his stead, I can't fit those big feet. As they say, they're big shoes to fit. Well, I'll never be able to do that, but I hope that I bring the energy, the care, and the love to our audience, which is around the world. I'm Reverend Carolyn Wilkins, and hello to everyone. As I mentioned, Larry is on the road, and he may be watching us. So please, if you call in, say good things. You can also say hello to him. But we have an amazing and dynamic show today. We're going to be meeting with members of an organization called CLUE and CLUE Power. And CLUE stands for Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. And I'm sure most of you have never heard of CLUE, but any of you who have been associated with religious organizations may be aware that CLUE is a nationwide organization. It's an organization that has marched and fought for rights all over this country and the world, including immigration rights and rights with workers. And our local organization in Los Angeles is involved specifically with immigration justice, port workers, the LAX workers and their living wage ordinances, as well as grocery store challenges. And then there is another organization that came out of CLUE, and it is focused on women's work, the women's economic rights, and that's called CLUE Power, People Organizing for Women's Economic Rights. And we have three amazing and talented representatives of CLUE Power with us today, including Amanda Zeidner, she's actually an intern, but she's going to be the spokesperson. She's working very closely with us and has been over the last year, so I'll have her introduce herself in a moment. And we also have two wonderful people who are supporting this program, Reverend Marcia Hoffman and Aki, it's Aquilina Soriano-Versoza. Did I get it right? Thank you and welcome. I'm glad you're all here. And before we get into the details of CLUE, I have to do a little bit of politics and conversation about what's going on in the world today. Last week, we actually had a Trump-free zone. I decided because I had been on holiday and I didn't have any news for 9 days that I would spare you all any conversation about Trump. But things are just too juicy and too hot, and things are just going on every day with this administration. So I'm inviting us to have a short conversation about what's going on in the House of Trump. So the first thing, I woke up, I forgot what day it was, and I was watching a show. I think it must have been Monday because it was my day off. I was watching something, and I went out of the room for a second and came back, and they had breaking news announcement. Scaramucci had been let go. I said, he's only been here a week. That can't be possible, but it was true. And in a way, I think a lot of people were wanting him to be gone because of his aggressive tone, his very unflattering and really destructive language. And as many of you know, I'm involved in not only religious things and spirituality, but nonviolence and nonviolent communication. And I guess I could have used him as an example of how not to be, of being verbally abusive to people, of putting people down, using horrible language. He was only here for a short while, but as they call him, the mooch, is gone. And I guess he gets his pay for a week and he's out of here. But in addition, there have been other things that have come through the White House this week that aren't as glamorous and aren't as funny. And we're going to start with a conversation about that. One is conversation about Afghanistan. And this morning I heard that there was a conversation and really an argument, adversarial conversation with the generals of our country who have been doing this work for a while, who actually know what fighting is about, what strategy is about, and what our challenges are around the world. And Trump had a conversation with them that used an analogy of having one of his restaurants remodeled. Now, I do a lot of strategic conversations and analogies, but I just can't imagine what you could say that compares a war effort with someone who is remodeling and redecorating a restaurant. There just cannot be that many parallels. But what some of the generals came out and said is that unfortunately 45 is uneducated, uninformed, and really does not understand even the minimum of the strategy and the conversation around having war. But I'm even more concerned about the reason for them wanting to do more in Afghanistan, and it's to take over the mineral rights. And that takes me back to a sense of colonization. It brings up that ugly idea of having an imperial power that can go into a country and take over the rights that they have to what is natural to that country. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then the last thing, which really lends itself to the conversation we're having with CLUE Power today, is the immigration proposal, which is looking at decreasing the number of immigrants coming to this country and also changing the policy on how immigration is defined. So I want to start first with coming back to our guests. And if you would be kind enough to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, how you're involved with CLUE, and say a word about immigration. So I'll start with you, Amanda.
Sure. Hi, I'm Amanda Zeidner. I am from Minneapolis, but have been in Los Angeles for a couple of years going to school at Occidental College in Eagle Rock. I'm majoring in urban and environmental policy, and my minor's in education.
And what do you want to do with that?
Yeah, so I would really like to go into urban planning and design.
Mm-hmm.
That's my next plan. But
wonderful.
Yeah. And so I'm working with CLUE this summer. I'm participating in the Ziegler Young Religious Leadership Organizing Fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been working on the Power Committee through that. It's been a really great opportunity to learn about faith-rooted organizing and the important work that CLUE is doing.
Wonderful. And would you give us a few words about immigration, your thoughts about these new immigration policies, and also what CLUE Power is doing in relationship to immigration?
Yeah, absolutely. So at CLUE, we believe that all religions believe in justice. And so there's really like a lack of justice related to immigration in this country right now. And I think it's just so important that humans be treated with love and dignity, and that no one is an illegal person in this country. And with Power, we are beginning to kind of figure out what our role within immigration is going to be. We're a pretty new group, so we're still figuring it out. But one of the ways we've discussed doing that is trying to do some visits to detention centers and meeting with some of the women that are detained there. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you.
And let's next go. We're going to go to Marcia and Aki, so one of you can jump in.
I'm Reverend Marcia Hoffman, and I represent the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, Pacific Southwest region, and the United Church of Christ, Southern California, Nevada Conference. And so some of our work extends all the way to Hawaii. I am part of the Ecumenical Interfaith Committee for both denominations. And I'm a native Southern Californian, and so I have been raised in the little town of Banning, which a lot of people laugh at when they drive through. It's on the way to the desert. But I grew up with all kinds of different people as my friends as I grew up. And my family were public school educators. So my point of view on immigration is that we need each other. God certainly loves us all and includes all of us. And what is happening is horrifying to me. So I've been active in CLUE for about 15 years. I've become much more active in this last year because of what's been happening with our governing bodies. And I just recently became part of Power, so I'm a new member with that. But I go wherever I can to just be a presence and say that we've got to do things differently.
Thank you so much, Reverend Marcia. And by the way, POWER stands for People Organizing for Women's Economic Rights.
And I'm Aki Soriano-Versoza. I'm the executive director of the Filipino Workers Center, and I'm also the president of the board of the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And at Filipino Workers Center, we work mostly with caregivers. A lot of them are immigrants. A lot of them are undocumented. And you know, I became involved also as a part of helping to found and grow CLUE Power because so many of the economic rights issues are women's issues. And we really wanted to see how we could grow more of a space where, you know, clergy and laity can come together to lift up women's rights, in particular women's women rights. And right now with immigration, especially, we work with so many undocumented workers. It's just creating more and more exploitation because workers are so afraid. And it also is just causing a lot of anguish, like families being separated, a lot of fear in children. And right now, especially with Trump's new proposal, it's just so inhumane. And it's a lot of Filipinos came over through family petitions, and family is a huge value. And so if you destroy those types of networks, you know, you just also strip the humanity from people, and you're just looking at what can they give. But instead of like honoring what they're giving and then seeing them as whole people.
Yes. Well, I so much appreciate you bringing that point of view. And the idea of families is what all of this is built on. And it has been the way for the first immigrants who came. They'd send the able-bodied, and then they would go back and bring the rest. They'd send for the children. They'd send for the mother. And they would come little by little. And so the current administration is looking at stopping that part of it and having the criteria be more about education, language skills, speaking English, as well as their having a job, and as someone said, it doesn't say on the Statue of Liberty, give me your educated and your doctoral students. And many of you have not read some of the sayings on the Statue of Liberty, but it says, give me your poor, your tired. And opening them to what is an opportunity of America. And regardless of what we say about the current person in the White House, this country is still a country of opportunity. It's a country that people want to come to. It's a country that those who are in want to stay in. And I elevate what we do, what we can do, but I know we can do more. So let's go into next point of conversation. And I also wanted to share with the listening audience that I'm also a founding member of CLUE Power. And we met for months and months of looking at what this organization might do and represent in the Los Angeles area and where we might be of greatest value. And a couple of the campaigns are around two different areas. And Amanda, I'll ask you to speak a little bit more about this. But one is the ordinance to protect women from physical and sexual abuse. The other is legalizing street vending. And the ordinance is really around some of the activity that has come from the challenges of workers who are in the hotel industry. So I know there are three major areas that are affected. And one is a level of injury rates that hotel workers have. The second is the fact that they are overworked because they're given goals and expectations of how many beds they're supposed to change and how many rooms they're supposed to clean, and they are unrealistic, so people wind up not having breaks or taking lunch. And it's really part of our own state regulation that people must have a certain number of breaks during a working period. And then the last is harassment, which is extremely unfortunate, of hotel workers having sexual harassment advances by the very people they work for or the people who are guests in the hotel. So would you expand on that, of how CLUE is involved in these two major campaigns, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So as CLUE Power, we've chosen two campaigns to support. I want to make it clear that these campaigns have been going on for longer than Power has existed, and a lot of people have put in some really great work into them. So make that known. But for the ordinance to protect women from physical and sexual abuse, it is in Long Beach, so that's where the ordinance would happen. And one thing, just so people understand why this is so important, 82% of hotel employees have been subject to verbal aggression and incidents of deviant customer actions on the job. So this is a very real problem for hotel workers. And in Long Beach, 85% of housekeepers are women. So that's how Power finds our place within this work. This really is a women-centered issue that's occurring. And so this ordinance is really great. It kind of has a couple of different components to it. One is that it would give a panic button to these housekeepers. So if they go into the rooms, they have a way of contacting security. And if they press the panic button, security would need to be there within 3 minutes. And kind of going along with that, the hotels would also need to put up signage stating that this is in place and that their workers are protected when they go into the rooms.
Yes.
And the other component of it is, like you mentioned, with workload. So it would let housekeepers limit their workload to 4,000 square feet within an 8-hour workday. And right now there's...
Now, I was going to say, what is it typically?
I'm not completely sure, but I know that it really varies between hotels. So this is a way to have some continuity for workers. And the other component to this is that with overtime, it allows workers to opt out of that without fear of retaliation from management, which is occurring right now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I know last year there was actually a whole workshop done and dedicated to conversation, and I really found out more. It's the kind of conversation that is not everyday things that we talk about. Many of us go to hotels, but we're not paying attention to the people who work in the hotels because we see the front desk person, and maybe we'll see the hotel staff who's in the hallway. And our only concern is whether the bed is made and whether we can get another towel if we've used the towels we've had. However, when you really look underneath what's going on in some of these hotels, and we've looked particularly in the Long Beach area because it's become a major problem there. The workers are given a huge, now this is what I hadn't thought about, is making a bed. Now I have several beds in my house, but I don't change the linen every day. And when I think about women, and this is what came up, women having a responsibility of doing some, I think they have like 60 to 80 beds to do in a shift. Now just think about that. How many beds can you change at any one time? And lifting, turning things over, and the beds can weigh 40 and 50 pounds, I believe is what I was told. But the weight, it has a different weight depending on what your height is. And anytime I've turned a bed, I've asked for help. But that is not what happens to the workers. They are required to lift, move, change linen, clean under things. And you all know, in fact, I'll put this note out. The next time you go to a hotel, please try to leave it in a state of decency. I've been in hotels and I've seen the way people leave hotels. They'll, especially, and this is not against anyone who has children, but the hotel workers are not garbage workers. They are there to make a decent wage. They think about the women who are doing this work and treating them with some compassion and dignity. Because when you leave your soda cans and bottles and McDonald's wrappers and everything you have all over the place, leave the bed in a turmoil and the bathroom upturned, then that means that worker has that much more work to do to bring it to a place of usability for the next person. And the people that work there, the staff, doesn't go through and look at each room and decide how long everything should take based on the amount of stuff that's in there. So they're just making a general assumption about how long it should take to do each room. And that's what these women are tasked to do.
Mm-hmm. And it's really important, the harassment piece, too,
Yes.
being able to have a button, because if you're in that room alone, I mean, we have one worker who worked at a hotel who, was... they would get cornered by supervisors in the hotel rooms, individual hotel rooms, and that's where they would really get berated and made her get on the floor and look, there's a hair here on the floor, and just and scratched her. Even all of these things can happen behind closed doors in the hotels. So it's really important that if they have that kind of button, also for supervisors who are not kind, it will help to prevent harassment.
Yes. So there's a level of dignity and respect that is expected at every job we have, and these are the behind-the-scenes kind of jobs that that you may not pay attention to. So please chime in. Are there any signals that we want to give people, and how do we support the workers?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the great ways that you can support this ordinance in Long Beach, there's going to be an event. It's on August 17th. It'll be at 5:30 at First Congregational Church in Long Beach. And it's going to be a speaker panel, so we're calling it Standing with Women, Safe at Work, Safe in Our Cities. and it's going to be about the ordinance, and there'll be some great speakers there that will be talking about the importance of this work. And showing up to that is really a great way to do your part with this ordinance and show the community that there really is a demand for this ordinance to be passed in Long Beach. Yeah.
Wonderful. And I also know that there are 4 or 5 things that people can do as activists in being involved in this kind of work, even if you're not directly involved in this kind of work with CLUE. But when you're making choices of the hotels that you're working at or going to, we encourage you to stay at union hotels that have good labor policies and practices. And we don't talk about unions very much. When I was growing up, there was always a discussion of unions and who was, they may be having strikes, but when I think back over the last 2 or 3 years, there's very little conversation about union workers, the fight of unions, how unions are interacting on a consistent basis. So think about this, and especially young people who are listening, go look at what the difference it makes to be at a union hotel and the labor policies that are activated by doing that. The second thing is one that all of us, from a standpoint of our religious background as well as just being generous people, is to remember to show kindness and respect to hospitality staff when you travel, and actually leave a tip. It's recommended that you leave $5 for each day that you're there. But I would say the money is important, it really is, but also the recognition and to be kind to people is as important, because I know when I just say good morning and hello and thank you, I get the biggest smile, because I know people are invisible when I've traveled. The other 3 things, we have petitions that you can sign, and you can go to the CLUE website. There are area organizers who are involved in this. And if you come to our program in August 17th, you'll be able to learn more about it and also donate to the organizations that are involved so that we can continue helping the hotel workers. So let's turn to this other topic, which I think a lot of people may be more familiar with, because this program goes across the country, and there are people outside of the country who are doing this. And in fact, in other countries, this is a practice that might even be more available. But it's legalizing street vending. And the street vending in different parts of the world are a way of life. I've traveled to many African countries, and you cannot go to Accra, Ghana, without the experience of street vending. You can buy anything. You can get your nails done. You can buy hats. You can buy blankets. You can buy dinner. Everything comes by as you're in your car on your way from wherever you're going to home. You don't have to go shopping because the vendor comes to you. Now, when you go downtown LA, it's not quite that expansive, but there are people who are used to having the opportunity of living with street vending who are trying to do that here, and there are laws and regulations that are contradicting what's very important to them. So who'd like to talk about that? Is that something you want to take, Amanda?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So similar to the ordinance, there is a coalition of over 60 organizations that are working on legalizing street vending, and it's really been a long effort to get this to happen. So one of the reasons why Power finds kind of a role within this is that 90% of LA's sidewalk vendors are women. And so this is a hugely important issue for women in Los Angeles, and women that have potentially been forced out of the formal economy to provide for their families through this work. And one of the ways that they struggle with this is that there's the fear of like a lack of safety in public spaces and harassment, and also legal implications that could really affect a lot of things in their lives. So we're trying to protect all of those things. And kind of some updates on where this is at right now. City Council earlier this year decriminalized street vending, which was a success. So that means that street vendors are no longer treated with a criminal misdemeanor when they're charged for vending, but they didn't legalize it. And so that's kind of the next push is to decriminalization isn't enough. We really do need legalization. So within the next month, we're expecting a full proposal for a permit program for the ordinance that will be reviewed by 2 city council committees, and that's going to go towards, or the committees are Economic Development and Public Works. And so those are kind of what we're looking forward to, and we really do need a legal permit system. And so we encourage City Council to act quickly on this. It's important, and it's important for women in Los Angeles that are in the workforce.
And this street vending is actually a huge, is big in our economy, and actually provides a lot of stimulus and a way that mothers can provide for their kids and be a part of the vibrant LA economy and quality of life here in LA.
Absolutely. It's not only an economic contribution, but it also helps us from an intercultural standpoint, because people of all backgrounds and lifestyles come and show up and show what they are making, the creativity that comes behind it. In fact, I was at a health fair the other day in Watts. And I was at a booth, and I was talking to some of the people who were with me, and talking about something, what's a good restaurant. I like seafood. I'd love to find a good seafood restaurant. And the young man who was there said, I know of a really good seafood place. There's a truck down in San Diego. And I looked at him like, a truck? I don't think I've ever been given a restaurant, reference to go to a truck. But it shows the difference, intergenerational changes. But the street trucks have wonderful food. And depending on where you are, I actually did give a reference to a street truck down by USC who had wonderful drinks and yogurt smoothies and other things, some of the best I've had. So the world is changing. Street vending has opportunities for everyone. It's an economic opportunity, but it's also an opportunity for us to try different things and to and an investment, really, because from a business standpoint, it's an easy way to get started. I grew up in New York City, so there were street vendors all the time. There was hot dog stands and pretzel stands and ice cream stands, and it was a part of the world, and the street vendors operated next to people who had stores and storefronts. So as a child, I wasn't aware of the conflict, although there might have been, but it happened anyway. And it was encouraged, and there were marts and malls, and the first malls were street malls. They weren't buildings, brick and mortar malls. They were street, where vendors came, and they did swap meets and they did other things, and then those turned into what today's malls look like. So, Reverend Marcia, do you have any thoughts about the whole conversation of street vending and how you may have seen the changes over the last few years?
I've had wonderful experiences, particularly first in Manhattan with chestnuts roasting.
Oh, yes, chestnuts.
I always heard about it, in songs, but no, chestnuts roasting. And
peanuts.
Yes.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And I notice where I live, there's particularly a lot of fruit vendors.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a family that loves to go to the taco trucks because they have the best real kinds of tacos. So I think that all that we're doing is very, very good. Mm-hmm. And then the employment that it does offer to people, and particularly to women.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And this is the entrepreneurial spirit, right, that we love to honor. And this is so many women that are, creating and are out there. And it's really important to give them not just right now they're in a space of limbo still, even though we're taken a step in the right direction of decriminalizing, because they absolutely should not be harassed by the police and criminalized. But they're still in a state of limbo, and we need to have a real permitting system so that they can feel secure in what they're doing also.
Yes. Well, there are a couple of things that come to mind when we talk about street vending. And I want to talk about really the whole process of legalizing something, because it doesn't happen overnight. You can't just come up with an idea and say, take it to your mayor or your council person, and they say yes, and it happens. This is a great example of the work that's been done by CLUE and CLUE Power over several years now. And I want to do a shout out to Claire Fox and Rabbi Jonathan Klein for their constant work of leading these organizations and going the step by step that is needed. There are letters that have been written. There are petitions that have been signed. There are conversations and backroom talks with the council people to talk about the challenges, to help them understand what challenges there are. There are testimonies that where street vendors have come to city council meetings, and they've discussed the challenges, the problems, the fears, the impact of the economics, as well as the impact on their lives of being taken to jail or being having their carts taken away, and the infighting between the people who own the different vendors. So it's a process, and the process is one step at a time, and sometimes it can be accelerated if you have a friendly support person. And we've had several council members who have been supportive of the work that's been done, and they've helped to push it forth. But it takes commitment. It takes time, it takes votes, and it takes money. So I want to use this as an example of how things work. We used to learn this in school of, they used to have little songs of how a bill becomes a bill and how things move forward. But I'm not sure people really understand how long it takes for bills to be implemented and then to be funded. So that's the next step. So we're waiting for this most important part, which is to have the legislation passed. And then the next will be funding and budgeting conversation. Because if it's not funded, then it's a dead piece of paper.
Mm-hmm. And of course, everyone can tell their council members how they feel about it too, and support this bill or this ordinance to be able to be passed and to be funded.
Yes. And actually, from our earlier conversation, it makes me think about the fact that most of us from childhood, one of the first things we learned about was probably through a street vendor. Whether we got ice cream or cotton candy or peanuts or something, that brought joy to us as children, to be able to buy something outside of our own homes, outside of what was made in our mother's kitchen. And so street vending is a part of our culture, is a part of our heritage. And we can have that conversation with our council people and those who are making the decision. So we have a little bit more time to talk a little bit more about CLUE. So I'd like to just go back to some of the original work of CLUE and who's working on it. Does anybody like to have that conversation?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, CLUE and or CLUE Power, is it both?
Well, CLUE was first. So CLUE's
Yes.
been in operation for many, many years.
Yes.
So if you have any thoughts about what CLUE has done and what they've represented.
Well, one thing that we've really been working on also, that's one of CLUE's also focus, is also around responsible development. And it's another issue with hotels, which is different than the worker harassment.
yes.
But because there are so many new developments that are going up, and they are getting things from the city, maybe waivers on things to build bigger, or subsidies, and we want to make sure that all of the hotels are also creating community benefits agreements, and are giving a real opportunity to workers to be able to organize as well, so
Yes.
that what's coming when we have these developments, that we have good jobs that hire also locally from the neighborhoods who are being impacted by the development, that hiring is also giving opportunities to women and people of color and immigrants, and that they're giving back to the community that they're profiting from. So there's several developments in Hollywood right now that I'm very involved with, advocating to have community benefits agreements together as a part of CLUE.
Yes, wonderful. That's an important part of what the work has been. The website, by the way, is cluejustice.org, O-R-G. And the mission, CLUE, as CLUE, we educate, organize, and mobilize the faith community to accompany workers and their families in their struggle for good jobs, dignity, and justice. And the work of CLUE has been done over many years now. I know Rabbi Klein has been involved, and I know there are other members who I should probably give a shout out to. But is someone else want to add to what we're doing?
We've been working on affordable housing,
Yes.
which is a big issue, and also a big issue for women. I work in some of our shelters, and frequently it's women with children that are there, although there's men with children too, and just hearing their stories. So affordable housing is something that there's a lot of groups working on,
Yes.
and CLUE is part of that.
And I know they've been very vocal about the homelessness issue and
Yes.
the monies that are being appropriated for housing now.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's still, even with the vision that LA has, which is very positive, by the way, and they're building hundreds of new structures, but they're still going to be missing by something like 500,000 spaces.
Yes, there's 44,000 homeless that are recorded in Los Angeles, and a lot of these places that get built as affordable housing, there's no definition of what affordable housing means, and that's quite a problem.
Yes.
And just real quickly, I mean, CLUE has been on the forefront of standing with immigrant families, creating sanctuary churches, and going along with immigrants who have check-ins with ICE, whereas before there was maybe a chance of being able to get some kind of if they had no criminal background, that they could extend their stay here. But now a lot of immigrants are being directly picked up at their check-ins, and so clergy are going together with the immigrants for their check-ins, for the hearings, and it's making a big difference in immigrants' lives.
Yes, CLUE was actually founded in 1996. It's one of the oldest interfaith worker justice organizations in the country. And in the LA area, they're working with over 600 religious leaders and 1,200 lay people throughout Los Angeles and Orange County. So our time is moving by quickly, and we're going to be coming to a close shortly. But I wanted to give each of you the opportunity to make a closing statement or share a little bit more of the work you're doing. So I will start with you, Reverend Marcia.
Well, as a minister, it's my understanding that President Trump has said that we may now speak from the pulpit on political issues and even about candidates. Now, I'm not sure that that's legal yet, but I
was going to say,
I give
I wouldn't do it
encouragement.
tomorrow.
I give encouragement in our places, our religious settings, to speak to these issues, and I try to do that whenever I am in the setting where I am giving the message, giving the prayers. Mm-hmm. I try to bring up a lot of these issues because it's so much needed.
Yes.
We need our people of faith to be doing what they can do.
Yes. So in support of what you just said, we reach out to faith leaders, Sunday school teachers, those who are leaders of groups at churches, to stay conscious, to stay connected with what's going on in this country that's affecting you in ways you may not understand. So homeless rights and immigration rights and harassment and challenges and opportunities for people to make a decent living affects you in one way or the other. Thank you for being here, Reverend Marcia. And Aki.
Mm-hmm. Well, our churches, our congregations, our mosques, our synagogues are such key spaces to get people involved and to bring support to sometimes scary struggles that workers have. So workers are trying to stand up for their families, trying to stand up for their rights, and having people of faith come and help to lift their spirits and really stand and support them makes such a huge difference. So for domestic workers especially, we've had so much support from CLUE and religious people of faith in general that it really makes a difference.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Amanda, our young leader here.
Well, at CLUE, we believe that our spirituality and faith practices and community all come together to create a more just and sacred society. And so I think I would just lift that up. If anyone listening today is interested in getting engaged with the work that CLUE does or the work that CLUE Power is doing, they can contact me. My email address is Zeidner, Zeidner, at cluejustice.org. And I can get you information on events that are coming up. But the event on August 17th at First Congregational Church in Long Beach is really going to be a great opportunity to support this work and support women in the workforce.
Wonderful. And tell us a little short message about what you envision in this work that you're going to be doing, that you intend to do around planning and city work when you finish your schooling. What is the best case scenario you see?
Okay. Well, I'm really interested in sustainable urban planning and how cities, everyone is moving to cities. That's kind of like the trajectory of what's happening right now. And so how cities can provide spaces where we're not hurting the environment around us and we're being respectful of the climate and the environment that we have been so gifted to receive. And also a place where people have equity in spaces that, like the work that we're doing at CLUE, that people have the ability to work and provide for their families and be a part of community. So I think
Okay.
that's what I'm interested in. Yeah.
Thank you, and we wish you the best. And as I come to a closing, I thank you all for listening. I know sometimes these topics may seem like they're a little bit heavy, or what are we doing, and why are we always talking about challenges. But I wanted to add something, because we didn't do a lot of laughing today. We talked about some good things. But you know something, when you're able to talk to women who are street vendors and can give them the support, they're being courageous in coming out into the streets to have their business. And there's nothing that is more wonderful than to give them a sense of security and safety in the work they're doing, because they're taking care of their children and their family. There's nothing better than being able to speak with immigrants. And most of our families have come that way. So it's not like this is an unknown to this United States. It's just being fair and equitable in what we do. So this is able to bring a smile to the people who are here and generations to come forth. So the joy is in our own ability to be kind, to be compassionate, to be caring. And that's what I know I'm here for, and I know you're here for that too. So as Larry ends every program, a nation can rise no higher than it elevates its women, and I always add, and its youth. And I believe a nation can rise no higher than the way it steps out in love and compassion and kindness. Peace out to all. Wishing you a wonderful week.
Online dating. I met this girl online. Online dating. I met this girl online. Clicked and fell into this date from hell. She looked nothing